Chapter 23, the Edward James tape, continued. All right. Didn't make much sense, did it? Not after I'd leaned over Will Roberts' shoulder and seen what he was typing. He was the station expert, as I was proceeding in a westerly direction kind of statement he was, and that was exactly the sort of thing he was typing out, man. I had been watching the premises known as Place Wernlas for some time before I decided I would break in that night. That's what I read when he was typing. Words to that effect, anyhow. It's a long time ago. I can't remember exactly. But he may have been young. I may have been green. But I had enough experience to recognize a stitch-up job when I saw one. Don't you say nothing, Will Roberts warned when he saw that I was about to open my mouth. We all know William Davies is guilty, boy, and that's what counts. So, there was a flat atmosphere in the station on Monday morning, and it was caused by something more than just the beginning of the week, let me tell you. Myrick Evans, he'd been working all weekend, see? And he'd extracted a confession out of the deaf mute by any means possible. And even now, all these years later, it is painful for me to admit that anyone I worked with was capable of such a thing. Back then, devastating. I was young. It was the beginning of my career. Who was going to listen to me if I said anything? Anyhow, it'd been a nasty murder. We needed a culprit. Now we had one. As far as some people were concerned, that was the end of that. But I was different, and I knew even then that there were too many inconsistencies to make it probable. From the start, how could a man who couldn't hear, who could only barely speak, have composed that kind of confession? I did think it was improbable. And if it turned out I was ultimately right, I can hardly claim to be a genius now, can I? Anyway, at the beginning, just after they got the confession, all seemed to be working. William Davies, or Beda, whatever you want to call him, remained in detention, and a date was set for trial in the Crown Court about 3 months ahead. The fact that I wasn't really happy wasn't going to upset anything, was it? 2 days after Will Roberts had produced a confession, I was on duty again, and the prisoner was still with us, on account of the fact there was a shortage of space everywhere else. Even Carmarthen was full, and we heard they were two to a cell in Swansea. Anyhow, I was on duty, and it was my turn to take down the prisoner's meal, see, which we brought in from a cafe nearby. Food wasn't bad, pie and chips and stuff like that. And if the presentation was rudimentary, well, it was supposed to be a jail, wasn't it? Kept telling myself that as I took the covered tray downstairs to see where the cells were. There's only 2 of them in the basement of the old building, and they were grim. There was a glimmer of light in one of them through a small grill, but the other one he was in, was totally dependent on the electric. There was a small space, about 12 by 10, and the bottom half was painted dark green. There was a taped black line, and the rest was a glossy cream. Always reminded me of the bowels of the Titanic or somewhere. Didn't like it. Made my claustrophobia rise, tell you the truth. Anyhow, when I opened the clunky iron door to give him his tray, there he was, curled up on his bunk, looking at me with his impassive eyes. He was a big man with a thick neck and hair that was shaved too short at the sides, so it sprouted up at the top. He's big, and he was used to work. You could see that from his biceps and his forearm muscles. But now he was lying there like some big animal, brought down, dumb, without sound or language, useless. And I couldn't help feeling it then. A part of me still feels it now. It wasn't right. I knew that. I gave him his food, and he tore into it, and he looked up at me while he was eating in a sort of mute appeal. It affected me. It did. I was not in any position to assert anything about his innocence. I don't mean that I was, but something told me that I should. And it was only a chance meeting later the same afternoon told me how difficult any attempt at interference on my part was likely to be. I was off shift by 2, and at 3:30 I was sitting in the Queen's Arms in Miserpont when Merlin Griffiths, the solicitor, walked in. Myself, I was avoiding going home, see? I was disturbed, and I knew I was going to have to go shopping with Elsie. I was putting that off as late as I could. For the moment, I was my own man, and I have to admit, in a way, I must have been ready to talk. I can't remember who started it now, old Merlin Griffiths or myself. I say old to distinguish him from the younger one. But the one I'm talking about is really about the same age as me, isn't he? Must be 80 now. But he was a young man then, just like I was. I remember playing rugby against him when he was still in St Iltyd's. I hated him then, mind you. I thought he thought too much of himself. I wanted to crush him, mark him in the scum and score tries against him, in spite of myself. Anyhow, there was only 2 of us in the bar that afternoon, on opposing sides, you might say. Well, I knew that whatever passed between us in the dark plushness, he'd be discreet about it. That was his profession after all, wasn't it? He bought me a pint, and while I was sipping it, I said to him quietly, I do have to tell you in strict confidence, my own feeling is that man is innocent. I didn't even have to mention any names. He knew who I was talking about, all right. You have to remember, Jamo, he said, using my old school nickname, which everybody on the rugby team used to call me because there were so many Jameses. What you feel will have very little influence on the outcome of this case. You mean you don't believe in justice? I said. I was a bit over the top, I admit. But then a significant part of me had been tamped down all week, hadn't it? Ever since I'd been assigned to the case. Of course I believe in justice, Merlin Griffiths said. I wouldn't be in this profession if I didn't. But what is just and what is practical can be 2 very different things. I think part of you doesn't need me to tell you that. I sat there, quiet and thoughtful like, in the cool darkness of the bar. Of course I knew what he was talking about. Someone, somewhere, had decided how it was going to be, and I had better learn my lesson fast. Merlin Griffiths knew that, and he was on the side of the defence. It was a small town. Currents moved deep. You're warning me not to cross Myrick Evans, are you? I said. I made sure I spoke low enough so there was no danger of anyone else overhearing. I wasn't daft. Merlin Griffiths didn't look up. When he spoke, he sounded a bit like his father, who was way before your time, Gwendraeth. As I've intimated before, he said, I think you'll find it better if you proceed judiciously. Which is not the same as justice, I said, a bit too frankly. I can be a bastard too when I want. You should be aware that there are other kind of forces at work. I knew what he meant, see. I wasn't born yesterday. I knew I was born into a town that was a complex web, didn't I? Where money and influence and money made quiet combinations in the dark. And if you wanted your share, then the best thing to be was pliant, wasn't it? But my blood was up that day. I'd just seen an innocent deaf mute lying on a bunk like a dumb animal, and I was unhappy about it. What kind of forces? I said, just like that. That I am not at liberty to divulge. He got up and left the bar then, didn't he? left me feeling like a Saturday afternoon fool, a copper who'd been indiscreet with his mouth. We sat there and finished my pint and tried not to think about him or going shopping with Elsie. I realised these things might be even more serious than I first thought. If even the solicitor who was acting for the defence didn't think he could do much good, then what chance did I stand? Anyway, Merlin Griffiths must have kept quiet about our conversation because there weren't any repercussions on my side. Not until I heard from him again. Several months later, that was. I got a call from him late on a Sunday evening. I remember it now because I wasn't expecting anyone. Elsie had just gone to bed, and I was thinking about turning in myself. Jamo? I knew it was immediately. Well, it's not the Prince of Wales, I said. Even if my mother is partial to royalty, I have something to tell you. Something serious. Didn't even have to say who he was, did he? There was no need. What is it, Merlin? There's no point in messing about. According to my information, whose source I am not at liberty to divulge, you may be quite right about the Plaswen last case. How might I be right? I wanted to know the details. The prosecution's case might not hold up. There was a sudden click then. The line went dead. Merlin Griffiths hadn't even said who he was. Even if he and I understood each other on that score, I was still perplexed. Why had he bothered to call me? Did that mean there was a trust between us despite everything? There was no definite answer, and things did take a couple of weeks to clarify. What happened was this, Gwendraeth. The judge in the Crown Court dismissed the case due to lack of evidence. That meant he didn't believe the confession, did he? No aspersions were cast, mind, not directly. Myrick Evans stayed in place until he took early retirement a few years later. But that's another story. William Davies, better known as Beda, was set free immediately, and things went on much as before. So there you are, Gwendraeth. It's a mystery, isn't it? And it's not one I feel proud of. I still don't like the sour smell of compliance that hangs around me. The whole thing troubles me. Who killed Henrietta James and why? And who put the pressure on for a solution at any cost? It was a mystery then, and most of it is a mystery to me still. Hold on. My time is beginning to run out on this tape. I'll have to tell you the rest of this later. Or better still, come and see me.